Fuck my beat at.
Zumba trap money.
How y'all feeling today? This is Dr. Qedar.
Fuck my beat at.
Appreciate you checking out the video. We're going to get into theology.
Fuck my beat at.
I've had people question me, Dr. Qedar, what is your belief? What is your religion?
Fuck my beat at.
Sit back and relax, and I'll give you the theology of Dr. Qedar.
Fuck my beat at. Fuck my beat at.
What you have here is your Black Madonna and your Christ figure. If you notice the Christ figure, there are two objects underneath each of his arms. And these are
My beat at.
objects that we're going to explain. So, kick back and just enjoy the ride.
Zumba trap money.
Fuck my beat at.
Zumba trap money.
Fuck my beat at.
Here we have Mayan heads. So obviously there are cone-shaped, elongated heads. They are said to be purposely done intentionally. They use boards and wrappings to bind, and they start this at a young age. These are people that are of esteem and prestigious status in Mayan culture. And they cone-shape their heads like this to present themselves as a hierarchy in their society. The Mayan civilization, it dominates Central America for nearly 2,000 years, so maybe even longer. By the 9th century, this highly sophisticated, highly rich culture vanished. And the cone head type of appearance is quite obvious in their culture. Another Mayan piece, cone-shaped head, elongated. This was quite common. A lot of artifacts and pieces of terracotta definitely displaying the cone-shaped head. Inscription in the sarcophagus of ruler King Pakal tells of a journey through the Milky Way. It says they get their knowledge from the beings in the sky. The Mayan astrological science is impeccable. It's quite extraordinary. They go back 26,000 years and can, by this timeline, predict the shifting of the earth. And they were charting stars before the Europeans could even think about jumping on a boat and sailing across an ocean. And when we look at North American tribes, the Hopi believed their ancestors came, and they came from the sky. When we look at the Cree, they talk about the stars. and how they arrive from the star. The Lakota people, they speak about the spheres of light from the sky. The Zuni people, they speak of the sky and their ancestors. I mean, most of these legends are in sync with one another. We look at the Mayans and we look at the flattening of their heads. Some say intentional. And then some argue that they were born this way. But this piece here is a turquoise piece, skull covered in turquoise. Someone, again, who was revered, looked to as maybe a priest or royalty or king, and looked up to as a god or the voice of God, or one who was close in touch with God or God himself, a ruler, a king. Lewis and Clark traveled North America, and a lot of tribes they encountered had, I guess, what they call flatheads. And they intentionally, as you can see in this photograph of the Chinook, how they purposely flatten the heads to give it that cone shape. And you would do this to the infants, at infancy, and I guess they would let pressure off as they grew. Now I'm showing you all different regions of the world that practice this cone shape fashion type head. This child here is from Kenya, I believe. And you can quite obviously see that she, has her head in this elongated fashion. Now, I'm showing you different regions because it's quite interesting that these different cultures practice the same custom, and yet this is done to people of high status. This is a lady in the Congo. She's having her head fashioned in this cone shape fashion. And she's having it braided, of course. And again, she's someone of prestige. And they do this quite commonly around the world, especially before the 19th century. So when we look at this, and it was practiced in the later 20th century as well, but as we look at this, and we see that it's a broad span from North America, Central America, South America, in the continent of Africa, this custom of prestige of having this cone-shaped head. Now, this is a woman holding a child, the Vanuatu. These are the people of the Toman Islands. And they practiced it as well up until the late 20th century. And this is, we're talking thousands and thousands of miles apart. These cultures practice this elongated head fashion. This is Akhenaten, and you can see he too has an elongated head. And some would argue again, was he born like this? Is this a birth deficiency? Or did he purposely have this done? These are his daughters. And you see this quite commonly amongst the family line, as you see here, his two daughters with the elongated head. I guess you say, well, Dr. Qedar, where are you going with all of this? Are you trying to tell us that these are gods? People with the elongated heads? Are they gods? You may ask me. Yes, They are gods. And I'm God too. So this picture right here, this picture of this statue of, again, Akhenaten's relative. It's in good condition, well preserved. Doesn't seem like it was doctored. It looked like it's in its original opaque form. It's I like this piece because it holds its character. It doesn't, like I said, it's not been doctored or looked to be different. Well, Dr. Qedar, do you worship these cone-shaped head people? No, I don't worship them. Like I said, they did this for a reason. And I know the question is still lurking in your mind. How did all of these different cultures practice the same thing, using it for the same social status? I mean, was it like maybe they traveled and, this one went here, this one went there, and it became a fashion statement? These are just hypothetical answers I'm putting out there. Maybe it was something that was brought to them from, some of these cultures suggest, from the sky. What you're looking at right now are the Paracas skulls. They found over 300 of them. These skulls were found in Peru. And they're quite fascinating because these particular skulls, they know most definitely through observation and study and research that these people were born with their heads like this. They weren't purposely done with boards, neither were they bound with sackcloth or what have you. They were born like this. 300 of them. They date these heads 3,000 years ago. The cranial volume of the skulls was up to 25% larger and 60% heavier than conventional human skulls, meaning that they could not have been intentionally deformed. No binding, no wood. They were born like this. They also contain only one parietal plate rather than two, as you notice and you see the skulls. And the fact that the skull's features are not the result of intentional deformity definitely means that they were born this way. They took some of the samples to geneticists, and they didn't tell them where they found these samples or what have you, or what they were. They just wanted some samples to be researched by the geneticists. And this is what came back from the geneticists. This is what the result said. It had an mtDNA, mitochondrial DNA, with mutations unknown in any human, primate, or animal known so far. But a few fragments I was able to sequence from this sample indicates that if these mutations will hold, we are dealing with a new human-like creature very distant from Homo sapiens or Neanderthal. Geneticists are scratching their heads. This implication is huge. It's a quote of geneticists. I'm not sure that this fits in to the evolutionary tree. These individuals of 3,000 years ago could not have interbred with humans. They have a whole different biological makeup genetically. So we're talking of another humanoid that doesn't fit any pattern with animals or other humans. This definitely kind of makes the Darwin theory watered down. And by the way, Charles Darwin was more or less trying to fit the white European narrative to fit his evolutionary story. He definitely saw Negroids as on the lower part of his evolutionary totem pole and whites on the top, the Caucasoids. Charles Darwin practiced incest. I guess he wanted to preserve his bloodline, and I guess it also goes along with his evolutionary theories. But these Paracas skulls brings about a whole nother perspective based on what he says and how humanity was brought about. Hollywood is always trying to present to us these cone-shaped head extraterrestrial beings. And they usually show these elongated head beings as space travelers. The best way to hide the truth is to tell a lie right in front of your face. Does Hollywood know something that we don't know? I mean, most of the cultures that I've discussed so far, most of them say that they got their knowledge from the sky people. So now you see Hollywood presenting to you these cone-shaped heads, these abstract heads, these elongated heads as aliens, extraterrestrials. Why would they do that? We're talking about, I just showed you the Paracas heads, over 3,000 years old. They were around before Hollywood was. So where did Hollywood start to put on this image as these heads coming from outer space? Why that twist? I just showed you a broad range of this particular fashion, this custom being presented all over the world. The pattern is quite obvious. Most of the stories in the folklore speaks of these particular cultures getting their knowledge from the sky people. So I guess you're saying now, Dr. Qedar, do you believe that these sky people came down, these extraterrestrial beings came down and taught humanity all these different science, all of these different astronomical maps? How did these so-called primitive cultures have the know-how to build the structures that you see them build? Where did they get this from? This knowledge, this wisdom? Right now, what you see here is the Nazca lines in the highlands of Peru. Stretches for over 50 miles. It looks like a runway. Some archaeologists would like to argue that it is a runway. From an aerial view, this would be a perfect map or a perfect sighting for a flying vehicle to land, because of the elevation and the way it's laid out. Possibly an airfield. Possibly an airfield. Well, are we putting some things together? I just showed you the Paracas skulls. And I show you the Nazca lines in the highlands of Peru. Not too far apart. So now what we have here is the astronaut. It's dubbed the astronaut. This is a NASCAR artwork, and it was discovered in 1960 by Manor Reich. So more and more, as we go with the folklore and we see the layout of the artwork, we see we're still dealing with possibly beings from the sky or having the possibility of flight. More and more we see that having all of this astrological knowledge, you must have been able to possibly travel through these places. Well, Dr. Qedar, who and what are you saying is God? Because I told you earlier, if you asked me were these people gods, I would say yes. But I would also say that I'm God. Because I realize that the forces around me, I can manipulate them as a conscious being to bring forth the power that I could present to you as the power of God. The God that you worship. The God that you go to church to and pray down on your knees to. The one you look up into the sky and give praise for his wonders. I'm telling you that humanity have the capability, potentially, to do just as much, if not more, than the God that you worship on your knees, in your churches, in your synagogues, and in your temples. But our minds have been poisoned with religion that is warped in its whole concept of power. But those behind closed doors that presents you this religion knows who and what God is. And the potential of a conscious being to be able to manipulate the sources of energy around its presence, to bring about a change, to bring about development, to create, to destroy. There is no beginning and there is no end to the totality of creation. It was no magic wand, wave, abracadabra, bang, boom. Everything came from this Big Bang theory. That's definitely what that is. What you see as creation has always existed in its totality. Where do humans come from? Humanoids, conscious beings, have always been. We don't have a birth record. We don't have a date, a set date to when conscious beings first began. With that said, neither shall we have an end. It is an endless cycle. As beings with the conscious understanding of being able to manipulate sources of energy around us, we can harness the energy of this planet. By doing so, we will be able to control the weather and achieve great speeds and be able to travel out and explore. And then we'll be able to put up a Dyson sphere around the sun and harness its energy. Then we will go to another level of civilization progression. And as we climb up this ladder of harnessing energy, being able to go forward, we'll be able to harness the energy of our galaxy. As we harness the energy of our galaxy, then we'll be able to go to the next step. Harnessing the galaxy energy will give us the capability of creating suns, creating stars. Those things that you say your God created. The one, you get down on your knees and you pray to when you go to your church. Or you look up in the sky and pray to. That sun. We can create a sun once we start harnessing the energy of a galaxy. You see, what I'm showing you is that we have the potential to take this leap. But if we still have this mindset that, we're nothing, we're just specks throughout the vastness of space. But that conscious power that we have to be able to manipulate the energy around us makes us special. It makes us have the capabilities to do all of what you say your God that you worship. All the powers that he has, we have it in our conscious beings. It's all inside of us. Being able to use math and science to bring about a change in our environment. But you see, what has happened now is that humanity has been poisoned, and they use their math and their science to throw atoms at one another, to crush atoms, create energy that will destroy them, destroy their enemy and themselves in the long run. See, we haven't even went past level 1 civilization. We haven't even gotten past point 2. You get a few firecrackers, you learn how to do a few things, and you play around with energy and you throw it at each other, and you're going to kill us all with nuclear weapons. We have the power to create life. When you get to the level 2 civilization, level 3, being able to harness the energy of a whole entire galaxy. And then you start harnessing the energy of a whole universe. And then once you start harnessing the energy of a whole universe, you start dealing with multi-universes. Then you can become any type of form that you want to become at that point. You talk about how the birds got here. Well, I just gave you some math. Because using the odds that there has been life, and life I mean by conscious beings able to manipulate energy, as I'm speaking right now, the subject I'm speaking about right now, they have been here. They have always existed based on the mathematical formula that we're talking endless space, endless life forms, conscious beings able to manipulate the energy around them, dark matter. Religious texts teach us that God is unseen and something that you can't see. Well, there's energy around us that we have no comprehension that is even there. Once we start tapping into these different energy sources, we'll start to find out how powerful we really are. The other question is, will we use it for advancement, or will we use it for destruction? Because so far, the little bit of knowledge I've seen this society obtain, they have been using it for destruction more than they have been using it for the advancement of humanity. Yes, we have the power to do all those things that you talk about. We have the capability, potentially, to do all those things you talk about that your text says God does. We are the gods. Obtaining energy from multi-universes. When you're at a level 3 civilization and you start to create universes, bringing into existence more universes. You see, this has been happening all the time. Because you better believe that there are beings that have this capability. And we do too. It's just that it's been dormant for quite some time. Our ancestors were a lot more technologically advanced than we give them credit. They give us hints in a lot of their artifacts, a lot of their so-called folklore. We definitely must look and understand that they had some type of respect for the world around them. And they were very careful in how they treated the environment around them. And they realized the power and the potential to use the energy around them very carefully. This is the power of a God having responsibility to create, to destroy, to be one with the universe, understanding it on a whole different cosmic level. Don't get stuck in time, because time is where you're standing at. That's what time is. It's your movement. It's your being. I'm going to go ahead and talk about the crucifixion piece that I presented in the beginning of the video. And underneath the arms of the Christ figure, you see two flying objects on each side. It seems to be a man pointing up either at the Christ figure or he is pointing at one of the objects. Some want to say that those objects are angels, guardian angels, but you can clearly see that they are some type of flying devices in this saucer shape. And there, as again, we're seeing in folklore and in different cultures that there's always something dealing with the sky having some type of influence on the beings below. And his Christ figure surely portrays that. And these objects appearing during the crucifixion is significant to the power, other powers that influence events. And we see this in the same illustration, pretty much, showing flying devices around the crucifixion event. And I'm not going to go into, right now what my interpretation of Jesus is. I pretty much showed, some people would say that Jesus does not exist. But I brought about these illustrations of the crucifixion to show that the cultural barrier lines, as far as objects in the sky, or as I spoke before, the Mayans and Hopi, how they said their ancestors pretty much got their knowledge from the sky. It came from the sky. They spoke of sky beings. So by me illustrating this and showing this, these flying objects around the crucifixion in the Christian religion, it pretty much says that there's no barrier lines with the same type of folklore. The pattern is definitely obvious. As I look closely at this man flying in this contraption in illustration, I see as though his head is a little, elongated. Maybe I'm, reaching a little bit, but maybe it's the shape, the way the artist placed him inside of the craft, but it seems as though his head is a little bit cone shaped. This is the monastery Visoki Dekan in Dekan, Kosovo, and it definitely depicts flying objects, just like our ancestors told us in their folklore. And you see this influence of the cone head in a lot of different other religions, as well as Islam, Hinduism. This cone-shaped hat known as a fez. You'll see the Sufis wear their cone-shaped heads, type hats. Are they trying to depict something? Are they trying to show us something? Are they trying to tell us about those skulls? Is that part of the secret of the lodge? Maybe. And maybe the people in the lodge don't even realize that they are depicting these cone-shaped heads, these elongated heads, which ancient cultures actually used boards and wrappings to bring about a display in the fashion of elongated head. My Moorish brothers wear a fez, and maybe they don't realize that they are depicting an ancient culture that have these elongated heads. So, with this being said, the influence, it broadens the more we look at it. This same fashion, this same style, this same influence is constantly being perpetrated in different forms. And with our ancestors telling us where they got their knowledge, and their knowledge being highly advanced, telling us what was going to happen 26,000 years ago, telling us what has happened 26,000 years ago, telling us what is going to happen 26,000 years in the future, that says a lot. Their cosmology was highly advanced. And notice that in most Western culture, and even in most Eastern culture, this long, elongated head is being worn by people of high status in all these different cultures. Akhenaten, your Masons, your Shriners, people of importance, people of noble status. So it's the same pattern from culture to culture to culture that people of high status are displaying the elongated head appearance. So are you telling me this is all coincidental? I mean, a lot of these cultures have never even had a chance to exchange ideas, but yet you see them with the same fashion. And we're going back 3,000, 5,000, 10,000, a lot of years back. This, of course, is the Mona Lisa done by Leonardo da Vinci, and it's got a hidden code, some say. And as you see, if you mirror the image of the Mona Lisa, you see, again, you see these elongated head images of what some say is an alien. Leonardo da Vinci was known to put hidden codes in a lot of his work, and people are just starting to decipher a lot of his handiwork. People trying to give us messages, trying to give it to those who are astute, that ancient cultures are a lot more advanced, a lot more technically ahead than what just normal academics will lay out to us. A lot of this knowledge is hidden and just passed along to certain people because you have a greediness amongst our society. They feel as though by covering up a lot of this knowledge, they can control the masses. So whether they know why they wear their cone-shaped fezzes or not, I'm quite sure there's someone in the hierarchy of these certain societies, Islamic, Masonic, and so forth, that understand what I'm saying and what I'm presenting right now as far as different cultures fashioning these elongated head type appearances. Some Sufis with their cone-shaped fezzes, you see they're very profound. They're dancing and they're swirling around, and they are definitely portraying these cone-shaped head fashions. Quite profound. Now, this is a woman, she looks to be pregnant. This is Lee Laverie des Bonnes, Moers, the Book of Good Manners, written in 1338. And you see that she is standing under a globe or some type of object that's floating in the sky. This is done in 1338. And of course, you see her wearing the cone shape type fez fashion. And I don't know, elongated head being presented in a different form, another form, again, with a UFO above in a 1338 painting. Here we have a UFO hovering over a building. This is a 14th century church. Apparently this church is in the same city where Vlad the Impaler was born. Dracula. And of course, there might be some type of connection with this spacecraft hovering over this building. And it just happens to be the same city where Vlad the Impaler was born. I don't know if there's any connection to that. It's just a coincidence. But again, we're talking the 14th century, and you see UFOs in the paintings. So this goes to prove that saucers in the sky is nothing new. It's constantly being painted, being shown, displayed in art form, and in legend. Because you know the Bible and Ezekiel talking about the chariot in the sky. It's the same story. Constantly being repeated over and over and over again from different cultures. Here you have a picture, petroglyph, from a site in Wyoming, Legend Rock. And you see I guess that is a penis, and I don't know if that's wings, in the middle of the picture. And again, you see a subject on the right-hand side with an elongated head and very big head, and you have the bird underneath. So to let you know that flying is definitely taking place. And that guy with the penis, the caricature with the penis, well, really don't know what it's trying to depict. I don't know if it's trying to depict procreation, or I really don't know where they were going with this. But it's an interesting piece because it definitely shows, again, that cone head, that oblong head being displayed. This is an ancient Japanese manuscript, 1844, called The Hollow Ship. It's a story tells of a fisherman in 1803 discovering a strange shaped boat floating in the ocean, floating in the sea. Inside the boat, there was a young woman, 18 to 20 years old, and they took her to the village, but the woman spoke a strange dialect, and she held on to a box that she wouldn't let anyone touch. So they returned her back to the sea, and she got in her device and went on. So again, we see an unexplained object, this time not coming from the sky, but coming apparently from the sea. And that's what I'm going to get into part 2. The Theology of Dr. Qedar. Because we also have an inner world, and of course it's covered with ocean in a lot of places. And a lot of these so-called UFOs could possibly be coming from the ocean as well. We're going to talk about that. So I appreciate you listening to my video, and I like sharing information with you. And come back and listen to part 2. And I'm quite sure you'll find some more interesting facts. So stay tuned, and I'll see you on the next trip on the rebound. Stay positive, stay safe. This is your brother. I love y'all. Peace.